My memory of meeting the devil is stored in my gut, not my mind, because it has a texture to it, kind of like memories of being young and tasting another's lips for the first time. Senses heighten, time slows as nervous, trembling bodies collide. Eyes go wide as the memory petals of youth defy gravity and swirl around you as two become one, and your brain gets the signal to take as many mental photos as possible because your muscles know those moments are worth remembering. I'm not sure if my tale is worth remembering, but unfortunately, it's impossible to forget. Because unlike the fleeting warmth generated from recalling the haunted joys of youth, the devil's icy embrace echoes through your bones and forever makes a snake of your spine. It was midsummer, just after midnight. I was sitting on my front steps. All the houses on the block were asleep. Their lights had been snuffed out one by one. Just me, my cigarette, the stars, and the tick-tick-tick-tick-tick-tick of the sprinklers. Looking down the streetlights started to glow brighter and brighter till they were blinding. I put my hand up to shield my eyes from the fierce light, and then, one after the other, the streetlights burst and bits of glass rained down, sounding like salt being sprinkled on the street. Then there was only dark. The end of my cigarette glowed like an inferno, the last spark of existence. The wind picked up, my body shuddered like the trees, but for a different reason. Clouds obscured the moon, but in the half-light, I saw it. A large animal on all fours, its back arched, snarling and tearing at its own flesh, dragging and cracking its claws in the driveway, and then sniffing and inching towards my neighbor's garden. It began devouring roses with thorny stems till the blood from its mouth began dripping and pooling on the cracked asphalt like a blood mirror. Its own red reflection held fast the animal's attention. The slow, steady, babbling brook of blood drooling from its mouth grew the mirror. Its head swayed gently back and forth as it gazed deeply into the swelling red reflector. The thorns slicing up its mouth seemed as welcome as distant stars appearing to a lost mariner at sea. Then clouds shifted, and the moon draped itself fully over the driveway. The four-legged beast was no beast. It was a man. At least, it had the shape of one. Naked, filthy, covered in dirt, old wounds and scars, with a wild beard, his nose to the ground, sniffing. Not just sniffing, though. Hunting. He paced back and forth like a zoo animal, glaring at me through invisible bars, reducing me to a piece of meat, a meal, a thing. He could have easily shredded me like lions do on the Serengeti. 1 second the prey is alive with a pulse, and the next it's a pile of fresh, bright red meat. He began to advance. My pulse was thundering in my ears. There was a stampede of adrenaline through my body. I made 2 fists and braced myself, but was frozen to the steps. All I could think was fox caught in a trap. Some gnaw off their leg to escape, but others can't bear that pain, so they die. I tried to ready myself to gnaw, to claw and rip flesh, but I knew he would break me. I could already hear the muted sound of my teeth shattering on the slate steps and feel the deep, dull sound of my neck snapping between his massive hands. My courage was in full retreat, fleeing me. Still in the driveway, almost to the grass, he stopped and stood up. From 4 legs, he rose to 2. His transformation made my stomach drop. And strangely enough, he advanced instead towards my old Jeep parked further down the driveway. His red-rimmed eyes looked from me to the car and then back again. His eyes betrayed a glimmer of recognition of what I have no idea. His immense chest started to rapidly rise and fall. Snorting like a bull, he launched himself on the hood of the car. His fist crashed into the center of the windshield like an avalanche. The manic torrents of his knuckles against the glass swelled with wrath as his suffocated, slaughtered screams clawed their way through his throat and stabbed at my ears. Blinded by hot tears, he leapt at the front door and began to wrench it open, and then he put his shoulder into it, pushing it the wrong way, like trying to pull a fingernail off. The metal whined and screamed the scream of a creature being destroyed. Scorned, strangled sobs took flight from his heaving, desperate lungs as he repeatedly rammed himself against the door with riotous fury. Bleeding and trembling, he climbed on the front hood of the car and, gnashing his teeth, drove his right arm fully through the windshield. When he yanked it out, his fist and arm were a tangled mayhem of flesh and glass. The cool night air rushed into the bone-deep slices of his mangled limb. He collapsed to the ground, his lungs wheezing, his arm decimated, dangling like a torn doll's limb. His contorted red face had eyes disfigured by swollen misery. He thrashed violently about, saliva mixing with sweat, as his muttered growl grew into a roar. There was no mistaking the sound of his annihilated spirit. The summer air went cold, and to my left on the lawn I could see a kind of mist rising. I tried to turn away, but I couldn't fight it. The skin of my face felt like it was being stretched across my skull. All I could do was stare. Whether it was my weakness or the mist's power, my eyes refused to close. I watched powerless as the mist took shape. Shoes, small shoes, materialized. The more I stared, the more the mist took shape. I felt dread oozing over me like someone had cracked an egg on my head. Vaporous, ghostly girl in Madeline shoes and a simple black dress appeared. Black bangs, but no face, her sharp black hair like knives. No eyes. But I could feel a primal frequency of unblinking, absolute power. Just as animals know who the alpha is, I knew it was the devil. My soul became a cathedral of fear. My confession, I felt somehow unworthy, finite, to be in the presence of something so ancient, a force that saw the world carved from nothingness. Every belief or philosophy I'd ever lived by evaporated when confronted by the sheer awe of eons of evil. It was like facing an event horizon, total atomic annihilation. I knew I was to be unmade. God's toy, reverse engineered. A small mouth of sharp broken teeth appeared and spread wide in a mutilated smile, and then sucked me into her screaming black hole mouth, sending me spiraling down her thorn-lined throat into her void stomach. She dragged me on a journey to the furthest pitch-black corners of her belly's dimension, where raging despair swirls in sadistic seas of torment and anguish, drowning me in the faceless ooze of doom and gloom, attacking my eyes, nose, and mouth with maniacal waves that drowned all thought, all reason, all sound, all light, till what remained was obscurity itself. After an age, I opened my eyes and found myself in supreme dark, unable to even see the hand in front of my face. In time, I saw that I sat upon a wasteland of flat earth. Illumination in the form of a giant screen killed the dark, as the private memories of my worst, most painful moments began playing, unfolding before me like some cherished sonata. My own unique portrait of suffering and scars, my pain portrait presented for her pleasure, because the devil feeds off human misery. She hides like a stowaway in the cracks and the crevices of your pain, chipping away at you. Her favorite are the times when you're deep down in the bottom of yourself, isolated, totally alone, whether sick, sad, or mad, convulsing and gritting your teeth, heart aching, trying how best to accept there are no streets, there is no sky, just mind's eye photos of pain gone by. Unending sweaty fever nights, black and blue mornings spitting out teeth, madness burning up your brain. Pain can produce energy, powerful energy. Pain can be so potent that it can create an echo of the soul. These echoes ring out across the wilderness of your mind and vanish like ripples on a pond. But your echoes also take a physical form. Some call these echoes tulpas, defined as aberrations of the human mind from dimensions beyond the reach of our senses. The birth of an echo, in a sense, is like a snake shedding its skin, except echoes are energy. They are pieces of you. They are the embodiment of your pain. Deep in your subconscious, you experience pulsating exorcisms that expel any pain whose wretched energy is judged so severe that it threatens your very existence. Echoes are invisible phantoms crafted from people's woes that hover around us as unseen witnesses to our lives. But in the devil's stomach, they are real and no longer beyond our reach, or us theirs. The screen began to burn, and through the flames I saw them on the other side, silent and still, with bodies that resembled humans, but the faces were all wrong, looked like jack-o'-lanterns carved by kids, the features upside down. All their bodies were maimed and mutilated in some horrific way. They were perpetually bleeding from these wounds, had red lava eyes, and were covered in swarms of flies, whose buzzing was louder than thunder. They all moved together as a bleeding mass of furious flesh. My palms started sweating silly, sad voodoo chanting, "Don't believe your eyes." But they were real when they screamed, and they screamed as one. It was a tsunami of sound that had me clutching my ears and running for my life till I had jello legs and lungs on fire. The sound of a great whip cracking transformed the sky into a violent kaleidoscope of colors that barked and hissed at me as I fled through endless dirt fields towards what seemed to be a large house on a hill. Behind me, my echoes broke like a wave of mutilation over the rich black earth, and in their bloody wake, crooked dead trees sprouted from the ground, were struck by lightning, and burned a steady blue. Licking my dry, cracked lips, I kept throwing glances behind me to see how close they were. I stumbled across the threshold and found myself running through a dusty old house, warped by time, with wooden floorboards that wriggled like loose teeth beneath my feet. I flew up the winding stairs. Their corkscrew shape made me feel like I was scampering up the backbone of some dinosaur fossil. Took refuge in a second-floor bathroom. Knew I didn't have long. The aroma of dead trees ablaze pierced through the cracks in the window pane, and I sat on the edge of the peeling cast-iron tub and soaked in the scraps of my final seconds. My serenity was ambushed by a loud fly diving down my throat. I moved to the sink and turned both handles but got nothing. The mirror was shattered and only a few shards remained. Right then I caught sight of lava eyes. I whipped around to find nothing and no one behind me. I looked again into the shards, and there, staring back at me, was an echo. The door exploded off its hinges. They were on me.